Hello, I'm Full Paragon, and this is your guide to Dark Wyvern EX Arena. The Dark Wyvern is an EX Arena where the bonus comes from magic damage, so just use mages. The kind of team you build doesn't matter as much as using a strong core of mages that have good synergy from the buffs that they provide. The boss can seal according to Nexon, but don't be surprised if it's actually bind instead. It says that the boss is weak to haze, but that just doesn't matter at all. Meigumin can work out in this arena, but don't use her if you are struggling to survive. We'll talk about the Meigumin first. It can be worth it to use her, but this is mostly if you have ReZero Meigumin. The buffs that she provides are strong enough that it's worth it to use her even though her damage is overall somewhat low, but if you get off that explosion, she's pretty great. Other Meigumins are only okay, and if you are using one of them, I would probably pass on it, as they just don't provide as much utility to the team, and so your score will be lower. You will need at least some gauge up, either from Arabian Amy, Amelia, or Whiz to make sure you're getting off that explosion quickly. She's not mandatory by any means, but ReZero Meigumin is just that good she's worth using, even in this arena format. Alright, the adventurer we really need to talk about is Whiz. Whiz continues to be one of the absolute best choices thanks to her incredible ult. It's hard to have something better than a tier 3 magic defense debuff and a tier 3 agility debuff along with a high amount of damage. Of course, Christmas Whiz is the best choice here. Her gauge up and hard hitting attacks just make her overall the best, but any Whiz will work. I'd say that after Wizmas, Summer Whiz is probably the best, but here you can definitely use either PJ Whiz or even Original Whiz. Because of the fact that the boss is typeless itself and has no elemental weaknesses, the fact that older Whizzes have typeless basics doesn't really matter, so they look pretty good here. Any welfare Whiz will still work. It doesn't really matter which one you would use. As long as you're able to get that ult off, Whiz will more than pay for herself here. The next absolute must-have adventure is, of course, Yunyun. It's just so great what her ult does for her team, and she doesn't have any cards that I would call bad. They're all at least solid. Halloween, along with her original, are probably best. Halloween for the agility buff, original because if you're using her personal weapon, she just deals incredible amounts of damage. But Academy Union or any welfare union would work. They're all pretty great. I'd say Onsen is probably the weakest just because her kit's kind of wonky, with one skill that deals high damage when the boss has dealt no damage to Union, and the other one dealing high damage when Union is at low health. So she's only alright, but even so, that's good enough to merit a spot on your team here. Make sure you have either Union or Rin, although in most cases, I'd say Union's better. Aru, of course, completes the Crimson Demon Clan trifecta for now. She's probably going to be best in the last slot due to her long cooldowns. She's great coming in at the last moment, hitting hard with one or two abilities, and then having it end. But you can run her up front. She's really great. It's hard to say if RP or original is better. The light-based RP has two really hard-hitting single-target abilities, one of which does a big defense down. Her original also has a defense down, and if you're using her weapon, she deals tons of damage. Use whichever one you've invested more in, although even Snow Aru is really great here. Lower rarity Arus will work as well. I'd say use her second ultimate because, again, boss isn't immune to debuffs, so we can squeeze a little bit extra damage out of it. Last, but certainly not least for the mage core, is Rin. She's pretty great. She does what Union does. Unfortunately, Union is usually better, as Rin's buff on her ult doesn't last quite as long, although it does give her a tier 2 agility buff, which is good in and of itself. I'd say original Rin, especially if you have her personal weapon, is the strongest, although Summer is very good too. You can even use Winter here, as the drawback Winter has of her ult being disfavored against enemies that are weak to water doesn't apply here at all, but any welfare win will work pretty great. Hopefully we will have Ninja Rin come out. She's a really great welfare option, but even if she doesn't come out, you can just pick another 3-star Rin and get acceptable results with any of them. Real quick, I'll touch on the supports. El Silo, Amelia, Arabian Amy, and Cafe Cecily are all the supports that I would call good, and in roughly that order of which one I would recommend using first. In a complete vacuum, I think El Silo is probably the best. That agility buff is really hard to beat. But it's not by a wide margin. Take whoever you have invested the most into or is just your favorite. If you don't have any of them, I might try and forego a healer at all, or just take the best 3-star unit that you have. Unfortunately, budget choices for healers are rather limited aside from Amelia, but she was a limited adventurer herself and she was out 6 months ago, so a lot of newer players don't have her. You could take Aqua as a support for memes, but she's pretty bad here as she deals physical damage and isn't going to be gaining you any bonus score, which is so key to maxing things out. As far as my closing thoughts, this is a pretty easy EX arena. As long as you use a Mage Days team, you're going to be fine. Try and keep a tier 3 magic attack buff up on your team as much as possible, and use Whiz to debuff defense and agility so that you have more time for pew pew and less time for having to heal your team up. Again, Meigumin is optional, and I'd only go for her with ReZero Meigumin and some alt gauge fill to support her. But even a budget team is going to do fairly well on this arena. Team building is pretty loosey-goosey. I would probably put Whiz up front along with Union, and then either Meigumin, a support, Rin. It doesn't really matter. Again, the team building is quite flexible, so be creative. That's the video. Thanks for watching. There will be a stream tomorrow from Tier, which will give us a lot of new information. Unfortunately, that's also when the new banner comes out, so I'm having to make an educated guess. I'm predicting Ninja Banner will come tomorrow, and I will try and make a guide for that and have it out. If I'm wrong about this, naturally there'll be a delay, as I will have to remake the video guide. But until then, thanks for watching and have a great time in Konosuba Fantastic Days.